So, if we were to look at what country has suffered the most as a result of colonialism and colonial legacy, it's a completely unquantifiable question. But a strong contender would be West Papua. For the last 300 years, colonialism has absolutely kicked the ass of this country, and there's no end in sight. So, it's about time we made a whole video just talking about all the horrible things European colonialism and capitalism have done to these beautiful people. We'll start with the Dutch colonial rule. So in 1750, the Dutch East India Company would come and occupy West Papua and Indonesia in this region. They call it the Dutch East Indies. And this is one of the biggest initial capitalist operations in the world. And their whole job is to suppress this entire region and steal as much resources as they possibly can. And if we're looking at West Papua, there's a lot of resources in West Papua, but the big one, the one they're most famous for, is gold. West Papua might have the biggest gold deposit in the world. So the Dutch will annex all of these islands and hold them for nearly 200 years. And it is a history of forced labor, the Christian missionary suppression of the indigenous culture, and of course resource extraction. And this will go all the way until 1942, when the West Papuans would face a new nightmare, which is Japanese occupation. So after the Japanese declare war on the Netherlands and Britain and America and everyone, and their main goal was always the Dutch East Indies, so Indonesia and this region, because it is one of the most oil-rich regions in the entire world. And if there's one thing the Japanese Empire needed at that point, it was oil. So they occupied this area, and it faced the notoriously brutal Japanese occupation, on par with the Dutch at least, if not worse. And that would go on for many years until 1945. But eventually, after World War II, America and the UN would give West Papua back to the Dutch. They would also give Indonesia back to the Dutch. No one asked the West Papuans or the Indonesians what they wanted. They had strong independence movements for a long time, even up to this point. And as a result, the Dutch would face a big resistance movement, and eventually Indonesia would gain its independence. But West Papua, they would actually get their independence. They would successfully fight off the Dutch, declare their independence. They set up the West Papua flag and their government, and they independent for about 20 seconds before the US intervention comes. And the US do this thing called the New York Agreement, which basically forced the Dutch to transfer everything to Indonesia. And at this point, America is heavily involved in Indonesia as well, and is trying to turn Indonesia into a proxy for American capitalism. There's a whole book, there's several books about this, but it famously has a term which is called the Jakarta method. I'll do a whole video on that later, but go look it up. But basically, the US has turned this whole region into a proxy for US corporations to just come in and take whatever they want. So West Papua has simply, at this point, had their Dutch occupation replaced with Japanese occupation, now replaced with Indonesian occupation, which is really American occupation. And this period, which is about 1969 until now, has been filled with horrific violence, which I'm not going to detail because I don't want this video to get taken down, but at least 100,000 people have been disappeared, we'll just say that. And at the same time, there has been massive resource theft. Like, it's the same thing that the US does in Africa. Like, they'll start huge fights there. They'll start indigenous infighting. They'll start clan infighting. They will fund any group that wants to attack any other group purely because that chaos is the perfect cover to go and steal all the resources. That's what you see all the big fighting stuff happening in Africa, and you think, oh no, this region's just so unstable. It's America destabilizing it so that they can commit a heist on all the resources. They do the same thing in West Papua. And there's actually a huge US mining corporation called Freeport-McMoRan. They operate in this region, the world's biggest gold mine. And at the same time, they allegedly have enforced a lot of violence against the tribes of the region and have been going out of their way to destabilize West Papua as much as possible so that they can run this gold mine without any government oversight. The US government doesn't go anywhere near West Papua. West Papuan government, of course, is completely destabilized and destroyed. Indonesia basically turns a blind eye while these US corporations just pillage the whole place. Anyway, At the same time, Indonesia is enforcing US foreign policy here. They have banned the Papuan language, they've banned the Papuan flag, they have forced migration of Indonesian settlers into the region. It is a colonial project for all intents and purposes. While all of this has been going on, the Free West Papua movement has been fighting for independence. They've been fighting for independence for decades, if not hundreds of years at this point. Everyone just turns a blind eye to West Papua. Everyone does. It is one of the most oppressed regions in the world, and not only does no one help them, it never makes the news. Like, the violence here is horrific, and no one even knows about it. And of course, all of this is just a legacy of colonialism and capitalism. And it is just the latest example of how US foreign policy, which is all about resource extraction for capitalism, has just completely ruined this region, and they just do not care about all the pain and suffering it has inflicted on these people. The West Papuans have never been allowed to have self-determination. They have been occupied for 300 years. An insane example of colonialism and neo-colonialism. Anyway, I guess all the rest there is to say is free West Papua, and hopefully that's given you something to think about.